My name's Tony Marsh, and this is my first ever Polyglot gathering talk. So this is a lot of fun for me, and I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to speaking with you all. My talk today, it's about it's called the language matrix method, and it's something I've been working on since about 2010. I want to talk about the concepts of it. It's a language learning method. It's a language teaching method, perhaps more than anything. And it's also sort of a philosophy or maybe school of thought when it comes to language learning. So quick background on it all. In from 2005 to 2009, I was a military linguist in the United States Air Force with for Arabic. I was hoping to get Mandarin Chinese, but I got assigned Arabic. Wasn't even crazy about the idea necessarily of joining the military, but was already sort of a language lover. And found out that if I join the military, I can learn a language and go to the DLI, the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. There's a couple good videos on YouTube about that place. Really interesting experience. So in 2010, Joanna teaches the Army. Thank you, Joanna. That's very nice. So in 2010, I left the military and began teaching Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. Arabic, obviously, because of the military experience. And so those are the three languages that I speak well or well, you know. But the point is during probably 2010 teaching group classes to adults in a couple of those languages, I saw something that that made me have a real epiphany about about not just language learning, but about sort of a lot more than language learning too. And what that epiphany was a TED talk by Benoit Mandelbrot, the I think they call him the father or grandfather of fractal geometry. All right, and I'll get in. Actually, let's go with that for now. So, uh, the epiphany was watching this TED talk with Benoit Mandelbrot, where he taught, and I wasn't aware of this before, but he's talking about the idea of a fractal shape, and the fractal shape, right, is anytime you look at something like take a tree, whenever you zoom in on any of its parts, you see the same shape as the whole part. So if you pluck a branch off of a tree, you get a mini tree. And if you pluck one of the branches off the branch, you get a even smaller tree. So it's trees all the way down. And when I saw that, when I became aware of that, because in the same, and I think it's still on TED Talk, you can watch it. It's amazing. He says now, if you look, that's how artichokes grow. Like that's how the human body is. If you kept zooming in on blood vessels, you'd keep finding smaller and smaller iterations of the main thing. And then you start to think, okay, so streets are like that. You got the big street, then you keep zooming in on the map, and it just becomes smaller and smaller iterations of the same thing. And then you start seeing it everywhere. You start seeing how in nature it tends to be that branch, rivers, trees, human body. You start to see how man-made or human-made things tend to be iterations of squares. So right now I'm in a square-ish house in a square-ish room with a square whiteboard, square painting, square laptop with little square keys. All right. So you start to see how everything is iterations of the same thing. And as soon as I saw that, it just fused with the classes, the Spanish classes I was teaching, right? So I mean, this it seemed like it was like, wait, what's the connection? But I figured there was a connection. And the more I began thinking about it, I started thinking, okay, so in the same way that the trunk of a tree, like a normal tree, contains smaller trunks, which contain smaller trunks, which contain smaller trunks. And the meaning of contain here, like hold together, contener, like so it holds it together. So I began thinking, so in what way is language a fractal? I was like, language is a fractal. The epiphany, the light, it was language is a fractal, but how is language a fractal? So as I began thinking about how language is a fractal, I'm like, so what contains what? What's the trunk and what's the branch and maybe what's the leaves? All right. And the first thing that I realized is the following, and this has become a mantra of the method, if you will. It's that verbs contain vocabulary. All right. So one way to think of that, actually, no, we'll do tree first. Verbs contain vocabulary. So if you take a look, and by the way, this is my high-tech presentation for the day. They asked me if I wanted to share a screen. I'm like, thank you, Stefan. You feel me? I was like, nah, I was like, I don't okay, so this is it. All right. This is the visual aid for you guys. All right. You love it? All right. So verbs contain vocabulary. So how does that look in practice? Thanks, Stefan. It's retro, it's analog, huh? So how does that look? Well, let's pretend that we're all learning English. Could be Spanish, could be anything. All right. Uh the verb I am contains the vocabulary Tony. Stefan's going to say, well, if he can say I am Tony, I can say I am Stefan. I can say from XYZ and maybe a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever you want to say, right? So, and then you're going to get to know my handwriting too by this. You have to use a little suspension of disbelief, all right? But anyway, verbs contain vocabulary, right? If you can read it. I am Tony. I'm from Chicago. I'm a teacher. Stefan's going to say, I'm Stefan. I'm from Georgia. I don't know. I'm a whatever, right? So the verb I am contains vocabulary. Another way to visualize that verbs contain vocabulary is imagine you have a cup, which is a container, of course, and you wrote the word I am. This is iced coffee, by the way. People always say you're drinking soda. No, no, no. Anyway, so you write I am on it. I am on the container. And this is my to be verb. This is my I am. Spanish, soy. French, je suis. You know how it goes. Now imagine all the words you could write on little pieces of paper and put into the cup. So Tony from Chicago, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, a father, a brother, a mother, whatever. Now, if you ask me to speak English or Spanish or whatever language it may be, mentally, you can basically take the cup off the container and go, okay, you need me to render a question, or rather a response. Okay. I am Tony. I'm from here. So what's the topic? Introduce yourself. Okay, I'm this, I'm that. Put it back on the shelf. What's the topic now? Family. I have verb container. I have a wife and kids and everything. So that's how verbs are containers. Now, if you take that same verb and put it in the second person form of a question, still down there by the seed, you get what I call instant conversation. So I don't know how good our Arabic is today, but let's make it good instantly. Switch out the word I am for Anna, spelled A-N-A, Anna. So Stefan mentally can already say, okay, so if Anna means I am, like that's the value in that chunk, then Stefan can say Anna, Stefan, and je suis, je soy, and so on and so forth, right? Take that same verb, second person form of a question, enta. Now we have instant conversation, back and forth question and answer. So Evelyn can say, Tony, are you Tony? Looking for a guy named Tony here. Are you Enta, Tony? I'm going to say, yeah, Anna, Tony. Okay. So that's what I call the conversation tree. It creates instant conversation. If you like it as the cup thing too, I just find that it's a bit messier. I don't know. I like this. So you draw that on the whiteboard. Yeah. Like go into a class. No one's spoken a word of, like Wolof before, like walk in, create a conversation tree, and you don't even have to speak. You save your voice as a teacher. You just point and say, okay, can someone tell me something about themselves? Yeah, this. All right, turn to your partner, ask this, ask that. It's not telling people what to say. You know how in language classes often you're like, oh, I gotta, okay, what do I gotta learn today? No, you get to use the patterns of the language as a creative tool. Another mantra of the method is that grammar is a creative tool. grammar is a creative tool. We often think of grammar as rules. That's why people say grammar. That's why you have grammar police, right? Because we think of grammar as rules. Rules always tell you what you can't do, right? There aren't rules that are like if you go to the pool, it's always no horseplay. There's no sign that says, hey, you could jump off of this if like it never gives you it's never a creative constructive. So the patterns of language, and we all know this. We're all language lovers. That's why we're here. So we know that if you give me, John, you give me a couple patterns in Mandarin, I'm going to go, okay, so I can also say this and I can also say that. If anyone has any questions at this point, you're welcome to chat, say hello. You're welcome to type. You're welcome to talk. But if not, then we'll just keep moving. So
I have a
once,
question,
sure,
Tony.
yeah.
I was just wondering, how would you apply this to cases with languages that have, for example, more than one word for to be? There are different. So how would you do that then?
I was waiting for you to say, how would you deal with languages that have the verb at the end? Like something that
No, like
occur.
you have Ladakhi or Tibetan, they have like five forms of to be.
Nice. Yeah, great. Well, the answer to that, let's just use Spanish real quick, and I won't assume that everyone knows Spanish, but I also want to assume you don't. So one way or another, let's plant a tree for soy. Soy, that means I am. And estoy, which also means I am. You get where we're going here. Typically in your Spanish class, they say, okay, you got to memorize the criteria. And the student is led to think that, oh, well, if I can just memorize the criteria, then I'll be good. Because as we all know, what you're doing in a conversation in a foreign language is rifling through criteria. So anyway, obviously it doesn't work. But if you just planted the seed soy, okay, so tends to be for things that are more permanent, estoy like a state of being. We probably know that. So at this point, soy Tony, soy this, soy that, estoy, I'm here, I'm on Zoom, I'm talking, I'm speaking, and I'm ready. I'm estoy, 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 estoy. So how do you deal with it? It's two different trees. There's two different containers. Any other comments and then switch it into second person, put it in the we form. You want we? Okay. Estamos, that means we. So where are we? We're on Zoom. Estamos en Zoom. No, we're not on Skype. No estamos en. Just keep going. So once that epiphany started happening, the whole, oh, verbs contain vocabulary. The very next day or at the end of the week, and I remember this clearly, it was a Saturday, and I was teaching a 5-hour class, this adult school kind of hip, like you can drink wine thing in Chicago that type of thing. They did these 5-hour Spanish boot camps, right? So I was like, I got it. I was like, you do verbs, you do conversation trees. Like you get them, and it's infinite. It creates instant and infinite conversation, and I don't even have to do anything. I'm gonna be able to walk out the door basically and just kind of hang out, and it's gonna be amazing. So we go into the thing, and I'm just like, boom, just like feeling myself. And I get in there and I draw the first conversation tree, maybe a second, and pretty soon people are like, okay, cool. So, oh, cool, wow, yeah, that's interesting. It is natural. It's the template. It's I can do, wow, it's oh, da, da, da. And I promise you, within 10 minutes, everyone was so wildly scattered that they just were like, all right, cool. That's really sweet. Now they're just like speaking English. And I had to come back in the room. I was like, wait, what happened? I thought everyone learned Spanish instantly. I was like, why, what are we missing here? And I quickly had to reshift it and go, okay, how do you contain the containers? If the verbs are containers of verbs, well, what contains that? Because all of a sudden you got someone going, yeah, I like ice cream. Well, I did that. I go, how do you say da da da? And it all starts. It's beautiful in generative in the sense that that it generates like a tree, but it very quickly it grows like weeds. I don't know. It gets out of control quickly, and so we don't just want this savage garden. We want some more refined, manicured, like sort of landscape situation. Okay. which led to the next iteration of this, the next sort of circle. Syntax trees, absolutely, right? Exactly. It's a tree. That's why language is a fractal. All right. So here's what happened. Here's what happens next. The realization. So set aside verb and vocabulary for a second. The next sort of iteration here was that a question, like a real question. So not just, oh, in theory, I can say I'm here, I'm there. But let me ask you like a serious question. Like, where are you right now? Like, on what platform are you? Like, what are you doing right now? And so on and so forth. So, something that creates an actual sort of like realia like situation, no, where it's, well, I can say I'm wearing a blue jacket. Like I can, it's true. It's true. Like, okay. So in the same way that verbs contain vocabulary, a question contains answers, right? Because you could ask 20 people the same question and get 20 different answers. Yeah. Right. So these things are going to all fuse in a second. But yeah, so next time in the next class where I thought, all right, now this time we're going to get it. Let me start with a question. Just put a question on the board and just maybe draw some lines and go, this was my answer. John said that. Stefan said that. Beautiful. They're speaking Spanish. They're doing this and they're doing that. And if you wonder, well, how do I answer the question? Like, how do I answer? Okay, I get you're asking me, what are you doing right now? I'm drinking. I don't know Spanish. That's what I'm here for. I'm trying to learn. So, well, what you do is you take the verb container off the cup. You create a conversation tree. So now there was the need for that syntax shape, for that fractal shape, for the tree shape. It wasn't just, oh, let's say anything you want. See you later. Have fun. It was like, let's contain that within questions and answers. So the way that all of that comes together is that verbs, just sideways, right? So verbs contain vocabulary. You know what? I got to do it this way. Here's the big picture. Even bigger than a question. Start with a topic. This is the first thing. Start with a topic. All right. It could be reading, it could be coffee, it could be anything. Jonas, the way you showed that 3 with your hand, do you know sign languages? No. It's an interesting question. All right, so start with a topic. The topic could be sign language. Now, a topic is going to contain questions. If the topic is sign language, it's, do you know sign language? Do you know anyone who knows sign language? Do you know how to say this in sign language? It could go forever, right? Give me a topic, and there's almost a natural flow like water into branches, the fractal shape. So again, give me the topic, flows into questions. Now, those questions contain answers. Do you know anyone who knows sign language? Yeah, I have a friend who knows sign language. And then they're going to say, wait a second. What are we, how did you say that? Which brings us to the verb. The verb is embedded in the answer. Without a verb, there's no answer, right? Like if I just came up to Stefan or John or Barbara and said sign language, you'd be like, what about it? You know sign language. Okay, you need a verb. The verb contains the vocabulary. It holds it all together. That's a good question. Does everyone see this? So we'll get to so what about prepositions? Okay, very good, very good. Let me talk about that. Okay. So we're at verb, and verb, as we started with, contains vocabulary. Any comments or questions here? This is the big picture thing, but there's even a little bit more. It gets even better. Okay. Any comments or questions here? If not, let me tackle this question real quick about other parts of speech. Any comments or questions here? All right. So other parts of speech. That's a great question. What I find is that if you're so let's take the word like the like how we toil over um articles in German. I don't know German, but I know people. Oh, is it? How do you say the? Why is there 20 ways to say the? Like based on the case or based on
Der, die, das.
you know what I
I'm a
mean?
German native speaker, so yeah, der, die, das refers to the.
And everyone goes crazy, right? Because that's one of the hard things of every language has its hard things. So we could be talking Russian here with casing. With the point is that uh instead of telling me, okay, here's the table for die, das, der, da, do, and making me go, oh yeah, okay, let me, I'm going to remember the criteria. That's how I'm going to do this because, I'm going to get into my German conversation I'm going to have my Stein here. I'm going to go rifling through my criteria and going, oh, well, it's neuter and it's dative. That's definitely what I'm thinking about, right? So obviously not. What I find is if you take a sentence like the cup of coffee and say it needs to be in the accusative case. I don't know. I see the cup or something. I don't know, right? Instead of asking me to memorize all 12 ways to say the cup, give me a verb starting point. Like I see. What do you see? What can you see right now? Well, I can see a cup. I can see a bookshelf. I can see a lot of people on Zoom. I can see this and I can see that. And to the original question, Danilo, who I think asked this question, that vocabulary, everything other than the verb, becomes just a really neat, I guess, lexical group. And I look, at least personally, I think everyone, I'm way more likely to remember which version of the I needed or which case of the Russian noun I needed. Because I didn't just memorize a table, I was actually able to tell you something real. So the way that looks back on our master fractal is, look, the cup is classic vocab, right? It's a leaf. It's the furthest out part. The vocabulary are the leaves on the tree, right? So you want me to learn to say the cup? Okay, fair enough. How are you going to do that? Well, first give me the verb. Let's work backwards. First give me the verb. What about I see the cup, or I have a cup, or I like this cup, okay? But then so we're swimming back upstream. So, but even bigger than that, what question am I answering? Well, I'm answering you, I think the question was, what can you see right now in front of you? And that was the question. And the topic is cups or things that you can see. You see what I mean? So anyway, that's sort of the natural order of things. You can start here at topic, flow down to vocab and see what vocab you need, right? Rather than saying, today we learned cup, today we learned spoon, today we learn. Give me a topic and see what happens, right? Or if you want to start at vocab and swim back upstream, then okay, so be it. Learn the cup, but let's put it in context by flowing back up the stream. So that's the master sort of fractal look. Any comments or questions there?
Yeah, I would like to add something or to ask something. Like it's both at the time, I think. Um, so basically, what you said about the memorizing of cases and so on, and like not, of course, which feels logical, not wanting to like remember all 12 or whatever 20-ish ways in the language to and so on.
Is it up to
So
20 now? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead. All right. Sorry.
right. So what I wanted to say was that I think it's actually unfortunately very basic in like linguistics and so on that you have this um, knowledge or this like doctrine and yeah, knowledge again of structures and how they interact to each other. Like you have a verb, for example, and of course, like depending on the verb, a specific case is needed.
Right.
So, and this helps, like, because in syntax, there is a certain structure, like in every language, right? So
Mhm.
you have like a verb, and the verb like interacts with a certain case, for example, accusative or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
So that like you basically start, you even start at the verb, and then you go like to the case, and not the other way around. And I
There you
think
go.
that's
There you
a
go.
really practical thing, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And kind of along those lines, Miss Regina says, I feel like you're just telling me exactly what I do. It's funny, but that is the most common thing that I hear is whenever talking about this concept, this philosophy, and every people go, dude, that's exactly what I do. Like whether they be a language learner or a language teacher, it's the most common thing I hear is like, that's what I do. I didn't like maybe think of it as terms of like fractals or something, but like that's what I do. So that's cool to hear, Regina, and I hear you. So uh okay, next step. All right. Taking the same thing we just had, topics flow into questions. Questions flow into answers. Answers contain verbs, and verbs contain vocabulary. Just a few months ago, I was talking about this with a really good friend of mine who's also a language guy, as you could probably guess. And he said, once you get to the vocab, like once you flow all the way down the river to a vocab word, like maybe it was, yeah, this da da da, the vocab was on my, vacation. Now the vocab word was my vacation. And all of a sudden oh, where'd you go on vacation? All of a sudden vacation becomes the new topic. And my friend pointed that out. And I was like, dude, that's because I was talking to my friend. I was like, you're right. It's like, so if you think about the topic being the head of the dragon, so to speak, like it's good to know what's the head and what's the tail. No, because if you want to walk something, you should walk it by the head, not by the tail. You pull a chain, not push a chain. So if you're trying to push the language along by learning all vocab, you're pushing the chain. But if you can grab it by the topic, yeah, I can talk about this topic. That's the head. So for a while, I knew that the topic was the head of the dragon, and question, answer, verb, vocab was the long tails of the dragon. But when my friend said the vocab becomes the new topic, it's like it's a dragon that eats its own tail. It's an Ouroboros. So I was like, all right, hold up. So now I got to redraw it because before I had drawn it like that, right? So the new way to draw it is like this. This is pretty new. In a few months. Give me a second. Topics, as we know, flow into questions. Give me a topic, ask you 5 questions on it at least. Questions flow into answers. Everyone has their own answer. Answers have their verbs in them as the necessary nucleus of the thought, verb starting point. And verbs contain vocabulary. But as soon as you get to that new vocabulary, that often becomes the new topic. So that's the actual circular. That's the Ouroboros. That's the dragon that eats its own tail. And I've found now that if you just like for my planning a lesson for it, you could be a beginner, you could be a native speaker, and we can all be in the same class together. And the point is that this wheel or mandala or Ferris wheel, you can get on the Ferris wheel wherever you want. Someone could suggest a topic. Let's talk about bowling. All right. What about it? Right. Likewise, someone can say, hey, how do you say book? What's the dative cues? Well, you can flow backwards, right? So you can jump, you can get on the Ferris wheel wherever you want, and you can go clockwise or you can go counterclockwise, and it's just an absolutely infinite. I mean, if you only did verb and vocab, you already get like the first part, the conversation tree, you already get infinite instant conversation. So now imagine if you just bring these circles in to sort of these containers in to keep it all together. So anyway, that's the master. It's like an infinite conversation generator, infinite lesson plan generator. And it's the Earl Bros. Any comments or questions on that?
I mean, this is very similar to reading techniques for learning, where you're learning the language in context
Yeah.
rather than learning a set of arbitrary rules. And somebody said that as you get older, that learning lists becomes harder and harder, whereas in context is a
Yeah.
better way of proceeding.
Yeah. You said learning lists, you said, right, John? Yeah. Yep. I mean, that reminds me of something it actually was a while back, but something I read about chess players that the more amateur chess player, their eyes move around a lot over the board. Whereas the master chess player, the eyes are still, right? Because so it's almost similar, I think, because it's like if you think of lists being like, and okay, where am I supposed to da? Whereas when you get better at it, you unfocus a bit and think, okay, what's the bigger picture here? So I don't know if that's directly related, but that somehow reminds me of that. But I take your point, Mr. John, completely that lists are not it. But I think if you put it in the old Ferris wheel, Then it's good. Any other comments or questions here from anyone?
Yeah, it's actually me again. So I wanted to refer to something that you said earlier. I hope that's okay. And I'm really not sure if it even fits into the topic, but I hope so because like you said that you have to uh, or that you don't have to say it better, um, remember the criteria, but like in the way that you mm, intentionally wants to like cognitively remember criteria while trying to like translate in your head, and that doesn't work.
Mhm.
So my personal opinion or comment on that would be that well, in fact, um I think you could formulate it in a way like you like one should try to implement the criteria into one's head.
Okay.
Like, I mean, okay, in some way it's obvious, but I hope you know what I mean. Like, because like trying to remember, like really trying to remember certain rules and criteria, like I know exactly what you mean, um, is indeed the wrong way, I think too. And I think the alternative, as I already said, is that you could like try to like the criteria is still important, right? But like that you try to implement it by, for example, mm, having many examples. For example, we had this thing with soy and a stoy, of course. So let's take for example. Don't worry, I'm gonna finish soon. So
They only give me 10 more minutes here. That's the thing.
yeah,
Otherwise, I'd love to
okay.
talk all day.
Okay, no, like just as an example of for example, if you wanted to practice in theory this your soy versus your stoy thing, that you do it with your teacher in a room, for example, and like your teacher says, okay, um, ahora estás aquí, and like
Right.
practicing it because
Okay.
that's also the criteria.
Beautiful. So, and I can't see names. What's your name?
Maximilian.
Maximilian. Okay, sorry, I couldn't see. I don't see everyone's name. So Maximilian, you've perfectly helped segue into the same thing. I think Jennifer is asking. So what does it mean practically? All right. So that's all well and good. It's a mythological dragon. Great. It's like, what does this mean in practical terms? Okay. So perfect segue, Maximilian, and great question, Jennifer. Let's get into the actual brass tacks about what this means practically. Okay. And to do that within only 9 minutes. I want to bring in this plot twist. There's the OPI, oral proficiency interview. Oral proficiency interview. It's a speaking test. You may be familiar with it. It's the way you're tested in speaking in the military. So the way it works is you got to call someone or maybe it's in person, and they just ask you questions, maximum. So if I'm giving you an OPI in German, which I couldn't do, it would just be a series of questions that get increasingly hard, and I have to answer them. So, quick point on the OPI, everyone. Being in the OPI hot seat, right, where you just gotta, I don't even get to ask. I can't even really lead the conversations with my own questions. I'm stuck on the answer point of the river like the whole time. So I'm just there. I've always felt that is a little bit like like the Atari like Space Invader. Like you're here and you got these aliens coming at you, and your job is to like so the questions are coming at you, and you got to shoot down the question. All right, where's the last place you traveled? Oh, the last place que yo viajé was Mexico. Boom. Okay, and how was that? What'd you do? Oh man, blah blah blah. So you're in the hot seat. You just have to answer questions. All right. That's as practical as it gets. And by the way, I think, and we'll talk about how to train on that. But I think the best metric in terms of finding out how well you speak a language is the OPI. I mean, how many questions can you answer? Because you might have someone say, well, I know 10,000 words, and I've even heard people say you need 10,000 words. to be fluent in a language. Like if you dare call yourself a speaker, you better know 10,000 words, buddy, you know, and but you could know 10,000 words, but not be able to play the OPI game, right? Because someone comes up to you and asks you a question, all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, I froze. So how do we deal with that? Well, we deal with it with that concept. Go back to question answer. How do they learn languages in the military context? I wish I had more time. We have to find a way to meet again. Can we let's somehow find a way to talk? I would love to keep talking with everyone and talk more. So you're sitting here in the hot seat and the question comes at you, you got to shoot down the question. That game, which I love taking an OP. I love the pressure. I love going, you got to figure out a way to render an answer. You don't, there's nothing you have to say. They're not saying, can you conjugate that verb correctly? No, if I forget that verb, I don't use that verb. I got to find this path of least resistance. And that's where I'm trying to read comments and speak. That's where the martial art of OPI is a martial art. Conversation is a martial. That's one of the core principles of this method. That conversation is a martial art, and the crux of that, the core of that, guys, is if you think you need 10,000 words to be fluent in the language, then try being fluent in 10 words first. Okay, like it's like saying well, you know, I'm not a master chef, you know, actually my scrambled eggs suck. Like there's a shell in it. Sorry. But if you gave me 50 more ingredients, though, like my problem is I just didn't have enough ingredients, guys. You go, oh, okay, yeah, you're give this guy 50 and got the shell in the egg. Give him 50 ingredients, though. It's like that's my problem. I needed more words. So we're chasing you. I find a lot of people, right? I got my Anki, I don't know, my flash. I'm learning words. So core principle number one, and this is truly core. There's 3 core principles. I'd love to talk deeper. But core principle number is that language learning is not about memorizing words. So I write down memorizing words, then cross it out. It's about expressing thoughts, which will lead me to the final point. This will probably be the final point. It's going to have to be probably. Here's the final point, is that language learning is not a matter of memorizing words, but rather expressing thoughts. And so I have to give a nod to Stephen Krashen. Now, you know how everyone loves the comprehensible input idea? Which is as you should. I don't know. If I'm not mispronouncing, Stephen Krashen has that talk. You all know the talk? He has that talk where he says, look, language learning happens when one thing happens only. When you understand a message. And it was like a mic drop. It was in the 80s, but it was like a mic drop. Like he's like, that's it. When you understand a message. And when you hear that, I think, not like nice thinking. I love to hear a complex thing condensed into one core principle. I love core principles, you know what I mean? But here's the deal. That sentence is true. That language learning happens only when you understand a message. It's true, but it's only half true. It's only one side of the same coin. Language learning happens when 2 things happen, but only when those 2 things happen. The first is, like he says, when you understand a message. The second, when you make a message understood. I've been doing comprehensible input now for 6 months, they say. They say, I don't speak. I listen only for 6 months. It's like, all right, cool. Well, I guess your listening has gotten pretty good then. How good is your speaking? Oh, I don't know. It's like I've been watching boxing for 6 months, and then I get into the ring. I'm like, am I good? No. If you're going to talk about comprehensible input, we should be talking about comprehensible output. So it's been coined, but I want to coin that term officially today somehow. If you're going to talk about comprehensible, you should talk about comprehensible output. So what's comprehensible output? What's this? My realia. Like you go, it's a pen, it's black. Okay, boom. The question to the OPI thing, the question is the realia. That's the stimulus. That's the thing that makes me go, oh, I have to produce an answer. Now, how am I going to make my answer comprehensible? If I don't get that practice, not in theory, but true OPI survival mode practice, like I call it. If you don't get that practice, you're not going to get, how are you going to get good at it? You just think, I just need to listen more and I need more words. Like then I'm going to be good. No. 20 people are coming over for dinner tonight. I got to be able to cook dinner and not have shells and things. and I'm totally under pressure. So in the last 4 minutes, as what? So Jonas says I can speak as well as a 6-month-old baby. Okay, nice, nice. Okay, last 4 minutes here. I'll give just wrap it up with a success story, quite frankly. There, after starting to implement this method, and it wasn't as fleshed out as it is now, like in terms of being able to explain it, but this was probably, I think, 2013. The same school that we're doing the adult classes at, they said, oh, we got a contract with 2 guys from the FBI, and then later there was some Navy. We started to get into the military, and I've done a lot of work with clients from FBI, NATO, like different types of those types of people. And we had 1 month together, 5 days a week from 9 to 4 plus your lunch or whatever for 4 weeks. And they know zero Arabic. And the FBI that was coordinating this, they said, look, if you can get them a 0.5, amazing, but no pressure. Okay, because OPI goes from 0 to 3. It's roughly like ABC, like that framework. But they said, look, if you can get them to A1, if you can get them to like A2, like, no pressure. But one of the guys at the end of the 4 weeks, and he had an official OPI. It was 2 guys. One of the guys got a 1 on the OPI, and the other guy got a 1.5. So when you graduate the DLI, you take an OPI, and you need a 1.5 out of 3 to graduate the DLI. The DLI Arabic program is 63 weeks. And this guy got the 1.5 in 4 weeks, and his friend got a 1 in 4 weeks. So that when I heard that, I was like, all right, then this is definitely onto something. And from then on, I thought, okay, OPI is like the gold standard of how well you speak language, as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm cool, I'm good. I like to read, I like to listen. Beautiful, live your life. But for my style of training, it's basically OPI training, and it's all supported by, I guess, that philosophical underpinning, that fractal shape, which I think creates the flow you need to make this all happen. So that's going to be my last thing, and I got 2 extra minutes. Maciej, is it possible
Thank you. Thank you for this interesting topic. Can you please write the name of this app that you mentioned? Because I
App?
wanted to give it a shot.
Which app?
OPI, you said?
It's a kind of test. Just Google or ask ChatGPT about the OPI. It's a speaking test, and is it possible to find OPI questions? Yes. Go to the ACTFL website and download their manual. It'll explain. Is it an American thing? I think so. So, but it's universal in spirit. So, but yeah, for whoever asked there, yeah, you can find you can find videos about it. And also you can just talk to ChatGPT. You could say, ChatGPT, give me a 20-question OPI in XYZ language. You look at those questions, set a timer. I don't know, set a stopwatch, see how well you can answer those questions, and you're basically doing OPI training. We can stay an extra 5 or 7 minutes. I was direct messaged, so that's good. Continue this.
Well, I cannot find that because all I get is like about nails and some other things. But I use Talkpo, and it also gives us some type of debates, describing photos, etc. It's interesting, but it's not for free. Talkpo.
It's for free. I got you. Okay, I see. So again, if you just go to ChatGPT and say, give me an OPI or tell me about the OPI, and then give me as like a sample OPI, it'll just look, it's not that it's a series of, you could write your own OPI right now. Like, what are 20 questions I would want to ask my student? Speaking of self-study and OPI training, this is something that I want to add to the mix. You know how often when it comes to flashcards, we think of flashcards as being like, okay, vocab translation, That's often what they are. Maybe not always. Let me submit to you that the question card is the way to go. It's all in the target language, but I've got a so this is I wrote this up for someone else. This is the Spanish for what are you doing right now? There's no translation. If I can't remember what it means, I have bigger problems. Like no translation. ¿Qué estás haciendo ahora? What are you doing? I'm can't read my own handwriting. I'm learning a lot, guys. Estoy aprendiendo mucho. Right? What are you doing? Oh, I'm listening. What are you doing? Oh, I'm looking up this thing on that. What are you doing? I'm doing that. Put that back in the deck. All right. What do you do for work? ¿A qué te dedicas? Soy, my verb starting point. Soy profesor. Yeah. And so on. So I've got 30 cards here. Actually, you could hold your entire language in your hand and know exactly what you know in your language in your deck of question cards, right? You can be on the bus, you can be on the train and just go, all right, let me give myself an OPI. Right. What's your name? ¿Cómo te llamas? And I'm not quick to look at the back either. I'm just looking at the question. ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? Me llamo Tony. You know what I'm saying? So just putting the question card, you can basically train yourself style thing, which is it's just answering questions. The fancy way to say answering questions, but you can train yourself with conversation cards.
Sorry, I have one last question. So what I didn't really understand is like it's like so this OPI and if it refers to like any random theoretically randomized phrasal questions in a specific language, like it's still in my view from my view that questions in a language grammatically of course can differ greatly and largely in structure, in complexity, in length. And so I wonder how, if that's the case, if all of that is the case, how an OPI can be made operationable, like what's like how it gets systematical, because as far as I understood, this OPI, which consists of a certain number of questions, and the level you get is the higher you like the more questions you can answer in the language, in the target language. And again, the question, if the questions of course differ because of the language, just because of the language in complexity and length, like how can this be unitary?
Well, maybe this will help. It's not about the quantity of questions, it's about how well you can answer them. So and it's a coherent, like human-like conversation. So like if he says, what do you typically have for breakfast? And you say coffee and eggs, he's not going to go, okay, and how many stripes are on the American flag? Oh, and how many da-da-da or something. Like it's a coherent so if you say I like making eggs and bacon for breakfast, he's going to say, oh, and to tell me more about the process. How do you like your eggs? They'll probe to see what you can do in the topic. It's not just random firing of questions. And they're interested to see how well you can answer those questions, to include how well you can do circumlocution or speaking around the thing. So they're actually happy to hear you say something like, the thing that you use to, and then they'll probe this, and what's that thing called? And you go, I don't know. Okay, moving on. So they want to see that you can communicate your ideas. It's not about how many words you know. They don't want to see that you have 10,000 words. They want to see how fluently you can, I guess, how well you can, they want to see how well you can flow. It's not a textbook recital of the karate forms and how no, it's how well you can defend yourself. It's sparring. Gene, those are absolutely OPI questions. Tell me about cities. In the end, the flow of conversation is what the goal is. Exactly. That's why I like to call that was previous point, to call it fluent in 5 words. That's a big concept. Fluent in 5 words. You can't be fluent in 5 words. You won't be fluent in 50 words. If you can't be fluent in 10 words, well, you will be with 10,000 words. Thingamajig is an important word to learn. That's right. It represents all things. This was interesting. Thank you, Gene. Thank you very much. My pleasure. And again, I don't know how we can all potentially get in touch, and I'm not necessarily here to say, here's my website, here this or that. I know it's not about that. So I don't know. Maybe there's a way for us to keep in touch. But personally speaking, I would love to be in touch anytime with anyone and continue to talk and share ideas and everything like that. Build upon these ideas to leave your email. All right. And I don't know if I'm supposed to put a website, but I do have a website as well. Any last minute comments, questions, final takeaways? If not, thank you all for coming, listening, participating. Come to.
Thank you very much, Tony. And for me, it was really insightful. And in my learning and teaching, I used to implement different mind maps. But this fractional thinking, it's something new for me, I think.
Cool.
And questions and answers, this technique, it's easier, I think, because I usually thought about the topic, maybe some vocabulary, dialogues, but this more easier structure as just the question and the answer, and then the verb and everything else. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
It was really, really important.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know, as for my case, I really think that like hearing an idea that you also have thought about from another person, like for example, in a lecture, like here, like you could call it like that, always feels very confirming, and
Nice.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thanks a lot.